Hi, everyone. I'm Mandy-Lynn. Today we'll be joined by Nick Shepard, Robert and Elizabeth England, all from the Salvation Army. We have a packed show. Let's get started. Thanks, everyone, so much for joining me today. It really means a lot. I know that your time is very valuable with everything that you're doing today. We're going to get into things. So let's start off with the Salvation Army first. So maybe an introduction, who you are and what you do. Rob?
Yeah, well, my name's Rob. Thanks for having us on the show. And I am the Community and Family Services Coordinator. And so I just help organize any programs or wherever to meet the needs of poverty or mental health or addiction.
Perfect. And who's this lovely lady beside you?
My wife.
My name is Elizabeth England. I'm the Children's Outreach Worker at the Salvation Army Hope Community Church. So I organize events and programs related to children in the community that may be possibly at risk, may not be, but may be at risk.
Thank you. Nick?
I'm Nick Shepard. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. So prior to us opening our Out of the Cold shelter, my focus was on housing support. So working with people who are chronically homeless, getting them housed, whether it's through private landlords or subsidized apartments, and then providing that crucial follow-up support, which could be very different depending on the client, in-house visits, taking them to appointments, providing support in that way. Yeah, but my role's changed a lot now that we've opened the shelter. So I'm supporting our manager. So I'm on site here at the shelter right now, and just kind of handling a lot of those type of responsibilities.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So the reason why I've asked everybody to join me today is I want to take today's episode of Port City Personalities here on Rogers TV, and I want to talk a little bit about homelessness. You all are the frontline workers, some of the frontline workers that are heavily involved in helping clients and folks. And I kind of wanted everybody to have the opportunity to be able to see from your level, your eyes and ears, what you're noticing, what you're experiencing. And maybe if we could tie this back to pre-pandemic, and then kind of what folks' needs are that you're identifying. So I think we can start with you, Nick, on this, and then we'll move along and talk about this, Rob, your side of it, of what you talked about, and then from the community outreach portion of it as well. So let's start with Nick. What got you involved with this cause? And let's start off with that.
It was actually a trip to meet my now wife. I went to Guatemala. I think when I was younger, I was very much like a lot of younger people, just very much thinking of myself, kind of thing. More what the community and the city could do for me as opposed to what I could do for the city and the community. And then, just being able to go there, getting that reality check, seeing what real poverty looks like, and, what people struggle with there, really gave me a different perspective. Just felt a lot of incredible, gratitude for what I had here in St. John. So when we moved back here, after living down there for a number of years, I got into community development. I started working with youth initially with the St. John Boys and Girls Club. I loved that time in my life. And then from there, it was just kind of kept evolving. So starting off doing program management with youth and things like that. And then I was with One Change in the North End for a number of years. And that really kind of gave me an opportunity to work with other segments of our population, other cohorts, seniors, people living in chronic homelessness, that type of thing. And I got that taste for working with this population and just having an opportunity to support those populations. Yeah, and then and now I'm with the Salvation Army, and just really enjoying my time here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about, before we move back to you folks, is this year, what are you noticing from the front line in terms of, let's speak specifically to homelessness and housing and food insecurities?
I mean, and I mentioned this in a previous interview prior to us opening the shelter. I really feel like our community's in kind of the perfect storm, if you were. I mean, it's not just inflation. Pre-pandemic, I think our migration numbers were quite low, just with regards to people coming from other provinces to here. We all know, if we follow the news, that's changed considerably. A lot of people coming here from Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, because of the low cost of living, better quality of life. And we haven't kept up with regards to new housing stock. So it's really created this environment of, I think we're at 0% vacancy rate right now. So with all the, newcomers that we're having, both from abroad and just inter-province movement, it's created this system where, a landlord can reasonably charge whatever they want, and there was a rent cap put in place just for this past year, which helped stem the tide somewhat. That rent cap is disappearing in February. We expect the population that we work with in our community, the homeless population, to explode. Here at the shelter, I think people have these kind of beliefs that a lot of the individuals we're dealing with are just individuals with mental health issues, substance issues, and we do deal with a lot of that, but we are also dealing with an aging population, seniors who just can't afford to live on incomes that they have. Paying $1,400 a month or $1,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment is not sustainable. So I mean, that's been a huge issue. Again, inflation and just our population increase, and then our mental health system right now is just terrible. Just we deal with, I would say, minimum 1 to 2 relatively serious mental health issues here every night. Some of them are violent episodes, which involve police. The police are kind of throwing up their hands and saying, this is most of what we deal with now. Substance abuse exacerbates that issue. It's not uncommon for us to try and connect a client here at the shelter, or even some of the clients that I have that I know in community. It's not uncommon for us to try and connect them with mental health resources and be rejected because the communication that we get from our mental health services is, well, we don't know if this is drug related or mental health related. There's not a whole lot we can do, until the client pursues, sobriety. So it's just, that's probably our biggest issue right now. I would say, just from a community standpoint, is what do we do with our individuals who are struggling with their mental health?
Yeah, and then I guess, Rob, could you touch on that? And then perhaps your wife can as well, what you're noticing or observing, rather.
Yeah, the mental health, I find the way I see it is they're on the fringes of society, just for lack of not being able to understand where their mental capacity is, and for instance, reasoning things out, like if there is any help offered to some of these individuals, I don't think they kind of understand that they need it, and which breaks my heart. Some people with their beliefs believe that, you know, that what they're doing is okay, and really they're damaging their life, as far as not wanting to come inside. There's some people that we would feed at our cafe, that would come in, grab their food, and leave, and they're so conditioned of staying outside. They would refuse to come inside to the shelter, or even into the cafe and get warm and have a meal and a coffee. That they would take it, but feel more comfortable sitting outside. And then the conversation that I so much like to have, I want to, my heart is to cultivate relationships, and it's just hard to have any relationships with someone that just seems kind of off in their conversation, where I can't follow them or understand where they're coming from or what they're thinking. And of course, the drug abuse doesn't help. It makes it worse. And also the loneliness, and feeling that that there is no help. It just seems like there's no hope inside these guys, that this is it. I'm just going to wander, have no support, and even try to put support in place, they need to accept it, and the mental issues is stopping them from accepting it. And that's just what I've experienced. That's been my frustration with what do we do with that?
Yeah. So I've noticed throughout, well, before the pandemic, a lot of the children that I work with happen, not all, but a lot happen to be on the lower income. And a lot of them, like, there's very, very high percentage of those who struggled with, anxiety. A lot of them have autism, a lot of them have ADHD. But since the pandemic, what I noticed were a lot more struggled with their anxiety, or anxiety was heightened. And so some of them stopped coming to different programs that we would hold, and stopped coming to groups. Some of them, they have a harder time even going outside. And some of that may have to do with some of the parents' anxiety, going outside to play with friends. And some of them it may be their own reasoning, but some of it may be due to parental stuff. But so I may have, there was one instance when I was trying to create a program for older youth. And there were some that would say, well, I'll go, but only if it's on Zoom. Others would say, I'll go. This was when things started to kind of die down with some of the restrictions with pandemic. And so there were still a lot of Zoom meetings, but then that was kind of stopping. We were kind of starting to get together a bit more. And then, so I had some that would say, I will go only if it's on Zoom. And some that would say, I will not go if it's on Zoom. So because we were at a 50-50 split, it was difficult to know how to navigate that. But that being said, I do think the pandemic caused a lot of anxiety with children, with knowing, well, should I go to group? Should I not? Should I go to this program because there might be people? And what if I contract COVID or something from my friends, or from this or that? And so, yeah, there was a little bit more of that heightened, but for sure, a lot of ADHD, autism, a very, very high percentage of children who I have had worked with. Not all, but a lot did have autism, like more than I had worked with in the past, with different youth programs that I had involved with in the past, years ago, like 10 years ago, maybe.
Absolutely. And what would the age group of the children that you work with be? Does it vary, or do you have a specific
It's
age
very,
group?
the majority of the time I work with 5 to 12. But there are things that I will do that that we will, like certain specific once a month events where we'll allow children who are a lot younger, like 2, 3, to come to these events. And in the summertime, we had children a lot younger come to a number of summertime water fun activity type events that were a lot younger, 2, 3 years old, up to, I would say, 13, 14 would allow them to come to our slip and slide events and things like that. But no, I try to gear towards 5 to 12, and then we do have a middle school that we do events that we do that that would be like 11 to 13.
Thank you so much. And Nick, we'll move it over to you for a minute. I want to touch on addiction. I think that's one that we should talk about, and then we'll move it back to you guys again. Nick, what have you noticed in terms of addiction, or folks being able to get help or access services to help with addiction or anything like that? Talk me through that.
I mean, it's definitely been challenging. You know, it's important to try and you know, get the client when they're ready, you know, in that moment. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's long wait consuming, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through, quite frankly, to get into some rehab facilities that are local to us. So challenging, like we're having clients, you know, come to us and say, you know, I want help. I want a better life. I want to go to detox. I want to go to rehab. And what we're having to say to them, or when we make those calls, rather, what the message they're getting from, you know, our healthcare system is, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait several weeks. You know, I'm sorry, we'll call you, you know, whenever there's a spot available. And, you know, the timeline, we don't know what that timeline is. You know, they can't tell us. It could be weeks, it could be a month down the road. And I know that Rob is a great supporter of a lot of the clients in our community and trying to get them connected with different services with regards to sobriety and getting some help. And you know, he's had similar situations. But yeah, it's definitely, there definitely needs to be more investment for sure. There needs to be more beds opened up in some of our detox facilities and our rehab facilities, because you know what our communities, you know, and our taxpayers are saying is, you know, we don't want these drug addicts out on the street. We don't want to have to deal with this. But even for the people that want help and want to get better and want to become, you know, a productive member of society, it's a crapshoot. It's a coin flip whether or not they can get that help.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. Now, I want to take a minute, and Rob, I'd like you to hear your side and then your wife's side of, you gave a really powerful message that you'd shared with me about your journey. And I know as hard as it is to talk about, I hope that you wouldn't mind sharing your journey of how you got to where you're at right now, and your wife's, and basically all the amazing stuff that you're able to do now. But if you could talk about your struggle, because I think that folks that are watching right now, it's important for them to see how you can overcome things. Look, I come from a family, we've had addiction. I think everybody has had some form of addiction in their family, or crisis, or experienced food insecurities, homelessness, or anything along that matter. And I know, Rob, firsthand, that the first time you and I'd met, that you'd shared with me your incredible story and journey of why you do what you do. So do you want to take a couple minutes and talk us through who you were to get to who you are now and why it's important? And then your wife can touch on that as well.
Yeah, sure thing. When I finished my service in the military, I moved to Moncton, and I had a very big, at this point, drinking and drug problem. And even though I got out of the military, I was still very addicted and did not like to live that lifestyle of wanting to self-medicate. I know that now, which did I lost everything in it. I couldn't have any pay rent. All my money went to the drugs or alcohol. I couldn't keep the job because every day my goal was to get high or drink, and I ended up homeless for a few months throughout a winter about 15 years ago, and I lost everything. I had $50,000 in debt. That's all I had my name. But a place called Harvest House, which is very similar to the Salvation Army where I work now. They do street level outreaches and ministry. I found that place, and when I heard about that, I needed the help. I needed. I knew I couldn't do this on my own. I needed support. And I knew that would be a place that, first of all, understood, and they would support me in this, so, and not feel judged. And so I went there, and when I went there, this is a place where I believe I really experienced God. In my recovery, I believe Jesus revealed that he loved me, that he is my higher power in my situation. If it wasn't for believing in this and having an experience with Jesus, I probably would be still struggling today. So in my experience, it was Jesus that motivated me to want to live for him. And ever since then, during that time, I wasn't with my wife at the time, but I really, really believed in my heart that I would be with, I would have someone that would want to marry me, and we would be in ministry together, or in where we are today, actually, reaching out and giving back. And within that week, I did meet my wife. I got out of rehab after a year, and because I was marrying my wife, and eventually I went to school to study. I took compassion, I took evangelism, and from there I was doing my internship in Grand Bay, and from there I wanted to do an outreach for people with addiction, and that's where my heart was, and the Salvation Army let me use their space. And that was 4 years ago. I started a program called Celebrate Recovery. It's a 12-step program, and it is faith-based, but you don't have to be a believer to come. You don't have to be a believer for me to love you and try to help you. But that's what motivates me, and that's what I started that. Now we do our meetings every Monday at 7 o'clock. That's one program I started, and don't look. I've seen many people from halfway houses, and coming out of jail and coming off the streets, coming from the shelter, and seeing success stories, and that's what I live for. I've had people invest in my life, and I live for giving back, and I'm confident that people can be free. I'm confident that people can have their lives back, and I thank God for the Salvation Army. It wasn't long afterwards that they hired my wife, and that feeling that I had 15 years ago in rehab, here we are, we're doing it today. And just giving back. One thing I do realize that when people do get out of a recovery program, they get out of jail, they get, first of all, on the street, you're not going to get better. I mean, you're in survival mode. You're in survival mode. You're not going to, you need a place that will support you. And I think one place, if I had a magic wand, I would love to have a residential place, transitional housing, recovery group. That's my heart. Because when people do get out of a situation, where do they go? A lot of them go right back into the areas where, you know, the addiction is, and they spiral right back down again. However, we do have every morning from 9 to 5, every week morning, Monday to Friday, we do have a cafe that's open, and there's about 100 guests that come in, and I believe that they feel accepted. They feel that this is home. They don't have a home. This is their home. It's one of their places where they do feel where they belong. I've seen people come in with Tim Horton cups because they might have grabbed a drink from Tim Hortons, but they want to come to the shelter or come to the cafe because it's Hope Cafe, we call it. They know that I love them and that I want to support them and help them in any way we can. I've made phone calls with plenty of people, like Nick said. The issue is there's a lineup, there's a waiting list. And during that time of, I want help, to the time that help comes, we lose them. And it breaks my heart, but some people do get in, they make it to the detox, and then after the detox they can get into a recovery where they have a roof over their head, they have food, they can work on themselves. But until that's put in place, they're in survival mode, and the struggle is still going to be there. It's going to be
Okay, but how long, sorry to cut you off, Rob, but how long is the timeline roughly, right? So the process looks like this, it sounds like. A client or patron comes in and they have their hand up, I need help. And what does the process look like from there? And what is the timeline? Or
it's an application that you fill out online. Most people do not have a contact. Some do, but I'll be their contact. And then maybe 3 or 4, 5, maybe 6 months, I might get a phone call. We want to speak to so-and-so. And I don't know where so-and-so is. So-and-so either went back inside, or they're back on the streets, or they moved, and we lose that opportunity to help. And I've tried with someone since the beginning of summer to get them in, and they're still waiting. I talked to the addiction manager on the phone, and they said, we're just swamped. We're swamped. They're months and months behind. When I got help, I remember I was told that there was an addiction recovery at Harvest House, but I couldn't get in right away. It didn't take me that long. I had an opportunity to stay at the shelter. I refused because I wanted to keep using, and I was going to keep using until I got in to get help. And but I had a week or two. Yeah, it was a week for me to get in, and that really saved my life. But to wait for months to get into a detox, I mean, that is, I've seen some people overdose and die during their wait, and it's tragic.
So would you say that the lack of services, as well as the delayed support, as well as what sounds like a broken system, a very broken system, has ultimately led to the deaths of these folks? Liz, walk me through that. You're nodding your head.
I think it has, not 100%.
Mm.
I think it could have, if there was help available. People are swamped. The hospitals are swamped. Addiction covered people overdose. They go into the hospital and they're let out, and they're let out on the streets. I mean, you're stable.
Yeah.
Out you go. And like, this is a Band-Aid. There's a Band-Aid on it, and it's very frustrating and sad to see. Now, there is people that do get in and they do get help. There's wonderful help out there. The problem is there's so much need that at one time, 15 years ago, the help was able to help the people in need, but the need has grown.
It's too much.
Liz, talk to me about that. You seem very passionate about that question.
We've had friends, and we've had people that have come into the House Cafe that we've just had a heart for and loved. And Rob would say, "Can this person come over just for a little bit?" So every once in a while, we don't have a big home. We don't have a lot to give, but every once in a while we would have someone in for a bit, as Rob would get to know them and say they need help and they're wanting some help. And then we did know someone who passed away last year, who Rob had been trying to get him into somewhere. Very kind elderly gentleman and very sweet, but we had tried, and there were different circumstances where I think it did exasperate things because the system is broken. There were things we wanted to help him with. There were things that we had tried to help him to move forward, and for a lot of different reasons, it didn't work out, and he did pass away. And it was a very sad thing, and it broke my heart. And there were a couple people that we know that were connected with the Salvation Army last year that did pass away. And I think if things were a little bit different within the medical system, the hospital system, and within some of the recovery addiction type areas, and those people might not have. And it's just a very sad thing. So we experienced that kind of firsthand with one person in particular, but a couple different people.
And so if this person that passed and the other folks and maybe you could touch on that as well next, Nick, we'll get to you, but if this person had the proper supports in place, meaning, it sounds like we have the support, but it sounds like, we're really stretched thin. There's the support's there, but the amount of people that can access it at a time is very much limited. So would you say, Liz, that that it wasn't because he didn't want to access the support, it was because he was waiting for the support, and while waiting for the support, he'd unfortunately passed?
Right. And also the things surrounding the support. Like, can you touch on that a bit? When you had brought him to the place, he had tried to get in, and there were things that kept him from moving forward, like his feet and being able to.
Well, he had so many other medical
issues that
the detox couldn't accommodate.
Right.
But it happened. I mean, he's a man that was sleeping in a snowbank.
Right.
Well in his 50s, where over time your body breaks down. Mm-hmm. I mean, if there was sooner a place for him to get in, and even if
the hospital could have accommodated him a little bit while waiting for him to get into an addictions, but they're so quick in and out, and they're not able to fully at this time accommodate what they need to accommodate and keep who they need to keep while waiting to get them into another place.
Were they able to do this before, Liz? Would you say more so, or not always, but would you say that access to medical services was much easier for folks that are going through this or went through this, or the fatalities that have happened? Would you say that it would be less frequent if the access to services were better?
I'm not certain. I haven't been in this.
No, in your personal opinion, I guess, what you've experienced. I know you're not speaking on behalf of this. Yes.
Right. Just personally, I believe what I perceive is they're inundated, they're swamped.
Sure. Yeah, sure. And the onus isn't on any of them by all means. It's, basically it's trying to understand. So look, let's talk. We didn't talk stats, and we don't need to talk hard numbers or anything like that, because this is kind of just informally us having a conversation about it. But in terms of clients or patrons, what did it look like before in terms of people accessing services? So Rob, I know that we talked about how many folks needed help at Christmas time from what you saw from the year before. You and I had an extensive conversation about that, and folks that are in need of food. Talk about, has numbers doubled since COVID? Has it lightened up some? Talk about that. And then Nick, I'll get you to touch on that.
Our clients, or our guests, I like to call them, have a lot of them went to the empty stocking fund, and we had, I'd say, maybe 200 new clients that we've never had before signing up. Many families for the first time have been using our services. So a lot with families. So our children, it would have been about 1,000 children.
Rob, if you're in the building, can you come to the cafe, please? Rob, if you're in the building, come to the cafe. Thank you.
That we were helping, and Liz helped quite a bit with that as well. Just signing people up.
Right.
I'd say that's the biggest thing is, I've been here for, I'm going on my 4th year, but when I first started, we're putting everyone in our new program, and we've signed 300 people up that come annually for Christmas help. And this year we signed up about 200 more people in our program. Like, we should have that 200 more people from 4 years ago. It's quite a change, an increase of people. So it's just I'm assuming COVID had a lot to do to play on this.
Yeah, and Rob, I'm sorry, I know you gotta be, did you need to go take that, or are we good to continue on? Do you need us to pause?
No, that's fine.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we'll just keep on going. Nick, can you talk on that a little bit?
Just on like services, being really utilized. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of coming back, referencing what I mentioned earlier about, that perfect storm of sorts. I mean, it's not just from a housing perspective, but, and kind of to touch on what Liz and Rob were talking about, just with, services being stretched. It's, our healthcare system's overtaxed, mental health care system's overtaxed, our substance abuse and addiction services are overtaxed. Like all these service providers are stretched thin. And Rob talking about how we had a huge increase in the amount of people accessing our program, our Christmas exchange program. Food banks, we all have heard the stats. They're up way above what they're doing this time last year, the year prior, or pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. And even like service providers like Romero House and other agencies like that just provide meals. I mean, they're way up across the board. So it's we're really in a tough spot here. It might be time for the provincial government to start, spending a little of that surplus that we keep hearing about.
So let's talk a little bit about that for a minute, and we'll talk about the provincial government. We'll talk about the surplus, because that's the exact point that I wanted to get to today on that, in addition to highlight and discuss an overview of what we're seeing and what we're experiencing right now. So in terms of Romero House, so we know that they serve over, I think, 400 clients a day, roughly, right? And it might be much it might be much higher, but they used to be able to have the opportunity to allow clients, patrons to come in and to be able to eat their meal before, and then but now there's just there's too much need. The demand's grown so much, as you know firsthand. And how many folks will you serve a day, roughly, right? And what do you serve? Is it a food, a meal? Is it a drop-in center service? What do you do?
At our cafe,
Yes,
we open at 9 and we close at 12. So
every day of the year? Every day of the year?
we do Monday to Friday, except 2 months we have to close because we are overrun for getting ready for Christmas. So November, or sorry, halfway through November and December, and then we open back up in January. But we have there was another church, a Stone Church, was able to open and take our load for us. However, so we have coffee, hot chocolate. There is some bagels and some oatmeal, and once in a while we might have pancakes, yogurt. We always have bananas and donuts. And during that time, we also have 10 computers set up downstairs. So if anyone needs to go on and look anything up for any reason, they can use the computers. Then we also, because we're next to the food bank here on Union Street, so we don't give out any food, which Salvation Army typically does in different areas. We give out personal care items, so toiletries, detergent. We do give out some coffee and some bread and peanut butter, but mainly the detergent, so the soap and the razors and toilet paper and just shampoos and stuff that we give out, so they can come and get that. Every month, we also offer a clothing voucher every 6 months to the thrift store. And we offer apartment startup. I can help someone get into a room with helping towards $100 towards their rent, and then other places like John Howard and whatever we all kind of work together and contribute, where we help people get in, and then I can write them a voucher for a startup, so they can get pots and pans and cutlery and blankets and sheets and stuff. That's actually a voucher for the thrift store as well.
Perfect. And Liz, talk me through this kind of supports that you're offering right now for the children, for the adolescents.
Okay. Yeah. I am hosting a support group for parents of children with disabilities. I don't have many that are coming as of yet. Most of that is because I'm not able to give them a drive. I have someone give them. So normally with a lot of most churches nowadays, they don't. They used to have buses that would bus people in if you didn't have a drive on Sundays, but so a lot of the clients we work with, if they don't live in this area, they would need a drive to church or to Sunday school or different programs. So so what we do is I have my assistant go pick up children to come to middle school youth group, or come to maybe an outreach event once a month, perhaps, or once every other month. I might do that. And also to come to Sunday school. So children who would not normally be able to come to Sunday school because they don't have a drive, we will go get them and we'll bring them home. We a certain amount because my assistant has to do multiple trips to pick up these children. But I am not, as of yet, doing that with the parents of support for children disabilities. So I've only got a couple that are able to make it, that are able to find a drive and get here. But that's an option if they can come here once a month then we have that support. Again, we've talked about this outreach event I do monthly. So I try to have it a family event. So something that the families can go to and maybe get some refreshment, some food, and a fun activity. Like this month, we're going to go sliding. We're hoping to go sliding. So I'm advertising it around the area, and amongst different parents who've been to different activities, I'm advertising, hey, come join us. We'll have some hot chocolate. We'll go sliding together. Just something fun you can do with your kids. In the summertime, we had slip and slide events, water fun events, sponge tag, all sorts of stuff. And years prior, we had like once a month going to different parks and setting up our Salvation Army vehicle with some snacks or some hot dogs. And we would play games and have a little Bible story, a craft we'd set up at different parks throughout the summer. So it kind of looks, our monthly outreach event looks different every month. Next month it may be skating, or there might be an event right at the church where we're going to set up. We've also had Halloween fall festival days where we would have people come in from the community, and we'd have carnival games that we set up, and the kids from the community can come and play and have fun, and just something, so a free event, something to do with their parents. Or and then that's another, something else that we do is what else was I thinking? Oh, camp. We register children for camp that maybe might not be able to afford to go to camp, and so we will register them, and we will bus 50 children to camp. Salvation Army has their own camp, and we would get sponsors to sponsor these children. So it's a minimal fee where normally it would be like $300. We may ask them to pay $10 towards going to camp. So I help with that, registering children and making sure that all the forms are filled out and that they're ready to go. That's something else that we do.
That's phenomenal. So it sounds like, Liz, you're very creative, and I know from hearing around in the community, you're tremendous at what you do, and it's very much appreciated. I know by a lot of people, by everything that you're doing, Nick, that you're doing, Rob. So I think we have about 10 minutes left. There are a couple questions that I want to get into, and there's 3 of them that are important I think we touch on before we end today's episode of Port City Personalities, talking to you folks at the Salvation Army and outreach. And I think one of the big important ones is, as somebody here in St. John surrounding area, I'm noticing a lot of tents, and I'm noticing a lot more setup. I'm noticing tents that have things built onto them that look more like it is a year-round living kind of thing. So it's more set up like a camper style. And I know, like you folks, I do whatever I can, whenever I can to help out. But are we seeing double, triple the tents? Like, how many tent villages do we have here? How many folks are there? Are there children in any of these tent villages? I'll let maybe Nick, do you want to talk on that, or Rob? I think we'll let Nick.
Sure, yeah. I would say, I mean, it's definitely pre us opening our homeless shelter, there was a substantial amount of tent encampments. We're part of the Salvation Army. I represent us on various community committees that deal with chronic homelessness, and one of those committees, we keep track of the campsites and so that we can go and visit them. Like I've gone, like, and Rob's come on a few of those trips with me to drop off like food, water, hygiene supplies, hand warmers, etc. That was pre-winter. We've seen since the weather's changed and we've opened our shelter that we've seen a decrease in the number of campsites.
Right.
But we fully expect that when we close in March, at the end of March, that again, you're going to see a lot of campsites popping up all over the place.
Right.
One of the biggest reasons for that, aside from just lack of housing, is also, let's have what we would consider low barrier shelters.
Sure.
So that is that. And we would consider ourselves a low barrier shelter, but we are only open for a short period of time. So essentially, the difference between a low barrier shelter and shelters that we have existing is we try and work with individuals who are using substances. We we foster, very harm reduction environment to support our individuals that are struggling with that. Whereas at the other shelters, they take kind of a very straightforward approach to that type of thing. We are never going to kick someone out of our shelter or not allow someone to enter our shelter because they're intoxicated. We don't want them going out and freezing in a snowbank. We don't want them living in tents as opposed to being inside warm because they feel that they're not permitted to come because they're using or they have used. So I think once the spring weather comes in and we close, you're going to see a lot of those people that are currently in our shelter gravitate to, wherever they can pitch a tent and not have it be taken down, because at the existing shelters, they're not allowed to use their, that type of thing. So
Right.
I think that's a big cause of, maybe even more so than lack of housing, is a big cause of the tents and the tent cities. No children in any of the encampments that I've been to or that I'm aware of. But I am aware that has happened in the past. I've personally worked with clients who've come to our cafe, so Rob might be familiar with some of them, but who spent some of their formative years in tents in other municipalities, larger municipalities like a Halifax or like a Moncton.
And
so,
and in terms of, are they being monitored? So I know you folks are doing everything you can and you're the saving grace of everybody around, but are they being monitored? Like, is there folks coming other than yourselves that are checking in to make sure, I don't even know how to word what I'm trying to say, but checking in to see how folks are in the morning time? Like, are they okay at nighttime? Are they getting access to medical services? Or if mental health is a barrier, if accessing health supports, but then if you have the extra mental health as a roadblock to you, are they just getting the help, and are people checking in on them? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would say, there are other agencies other than the Salvation Army that are doing that. But it's hit and miss. I do like, and I don't know if you're familiar, I think it was almost potentially 3 months ago, there was a big front page story in the local paper, Telegraph Journal, about our homelessness up 66% in the province. And there was a specific article in that issue, that front page, that discussed 2 city sanctioned encampments that were kind of supported by Fredericton and Moncton. And I think the one in Moncton didn't work, and they acknowledged it was very poorly planned. Whereas the one in Fredericton did work for a time, and they had water stations. They had, they were all in one specific area. And because they were all kind of in one specific area, there was nurses that went there. I believe it was the RCMP that actually went to the city of Fredericton and said, like, look, we're, a quarter of our calls are moving people's tents off of private, land. Is there not something we can do about this? And I mean, ultimately, what I would really love is for everyone just to have their own apartment. But I think, while we wait for that, which can, we could fill 50 to 60 apartments tomorrow, and it not even make a real dent in our chronic homeless population. So in the meantime, I think this is something that the city should definitely look at, because we're going to have this same issue that we had last spring, where you had tents all over the place. You're going to have that again this coming spring.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that intel. So we only have about 2 minutes left. This is something I think we all can agree we can spend hours and hours and hours talking about. But my hopes is that the folks that are watching this today, they're able to see, and if they're able to make a difference in the community, what kind of supports can folks that are watching right now offer? Can they give donations to the Salvation Army? Can they give food? Can they give gift certificates? Maybe in about 1 minute or so, Liz, you can talk about what you're looking for.
Volunteers, volunteers, volunteers. We've been very blessed with a lot of donations, and we can always use donations of food for Hope Cafe, gloves, hats, mittens, and PCI items, personal care items for the shelter and for the clients who come into the Hope Cafe. But more than anything, we are inundated. Over 100 clients come a day to the Hope Cafe, and we are desperate for volunteers. And it does take quite a bit to become a volunteer. You have to go through an application and police record check. But we are so much in need for volunteers for our outreach events for children's, yay me, but also really, really for the Hope Cafe. We are needing volunteers. If you're someone who has a heart for this type of ministry, we would love to have you come talk to us.
The Salvation Army can't do it without volunteers.
That's right.
Is there a minimum hour? So folks that are working full time or that don't have much, could somebody volunteer an hour a day, 4 hours a week?
Yeah. An hour a month if you want, 2 hours a month. And really, like, what we're needing is someone who's going to commit to 8:30 to 12:30 at some point. It could be once a month. It could be twice a month. 8:30 to 12. You can be there a little bit
Monday
before.
to Friday. Monday to Friday?
Yeah, anytime. Yeah. And also Saturdays, Sundays, if you want to help out with kids, if you're interested in family stuff, there's always that too.
Okay, perfect. So, hey, listen, I know we didn't get a chance to really get into everything that we would have liked to, but I really, first off, want to say thank you. I think on behalf of anybody that's watching right now for all of the incredible work that volunteers, outreach, coordinators, Nick, all the fantastic stuff that you've been doing in terms of it. And I'm hoping that anybody that is watching right now can really, see this from the kind of scope that you have it from. You're some of the firsthand workers that have that kind of scope and the ecosystem of what it takes to be able to help in terms of support. So what we're looking for, or what we're seeing and noticing, is there's good services out there and support, but the wait list to get there is very monotonous, and the process is broken of getting folks there in terms of coming in, finally finding the gall, the nerve, or the realizing you need some extra help, but the process of going in, recognizing that, getting folks like yourself to fill out an application, and then after the application's filled out, 5, 6, 7 months of waiting has led to deaths and has led to folks not being able to access services. So folks, I want to wrap this up right now, and I just want to say thank you so much for taking some of your time today to be able to help us at Port